The problem is when we're not okay inside, then everything feels like a burden, everything's a lot harder. Why did you come to learn meditation? And I ask them, like, is it for health? Is it for peace of mind? Is it to find yourself? When I say peace of mind, everyone's like, yes. The breath work takes us into what's called a holotropic state. And in that state, you really are beyond the mind in a very, very significant way. And people often sort of come out of it and think, how is that possible to feel like that without any substances? The saddest thing about our modern world is not that we don't have opportunities for community, but we've forgotten how to be good members of a community. Because community needs authenticity, it needs understanding, it needs empathy. And sometimes I feel like we've almost lost a bit of our impersonal skills because we're carrying so much burden and so much pain that we've forgotten actually how to relate to each other in that almost innocent and playful way.
Jiena Klera Ġusordwej, naħdem fuq it-televiżjoni u anke fil-medja soċjali. Passjoni kbira għall-fitness u dak kollu li jista' jgħinna biex inħossuna tajbin mentalment u fiżikament. Dak kollu li nitgħallem, nirriċerka u nistaqsi ser inkun qed niddiskutih ma' professjonisti u nies b'esperjenzi li ser jagħtuna għodda li nistgħu nużaw biex ngħixu ħajjitna bl-aħjar mod possibbli. Nilqakom għal podcast ieħor Reboot għal min qed jismana l-ewwel darba dan il-podcast aħna nippruvaw kemm nistgħu nesploraw dak kollu li għandu x'jaqsam mas-saħħa, kemm fiżika u kemm mentali. Qed nitkellmu fuq affarijiet differenti, kemm fuq fitness, fuq nutrition, fuq psychology, qed nitlu ħafna fis-psychology, qed nitlu f'relationships, insomma dak kollu illi ġenna inħossuna aħjar. Dejjem ngħidulkom biex jekk laqatkom xi podcast partikolari u taħsbu li xi ħadd ħajbenefika minnu qasmuh, tistgħu tisimgħuhom billi titlu fuq Spotify, Apple Podcasts, għandna l-YouTube channel ukoll u wkoll tistgħu titlu fuq Instagram u Facebook tfittxu Reboot u kien hemm l-informazzjoni kollha u anke clips tal-mistiedna illi jkunu magħna. Illum bi pjaċir kbir għandi magħna lil Yasmin Degiorgio. Yasmin hija persuna li dejjem tippromuovi dak kollu li għandu x'jaqsam mal-well-being tagħna, ġifieri kienet importanti li tiġi fil-podcast tagħna tippromuovi affarijiet naturali li jgħinuna nikkumbattu l-istress u l-ansjetà. Il-missjoni Ħajja li tipprovdi support għal nies biex ifiqu, jitalmu anke jiskopru aktar lilhom infushom. Għandha rwol ieħor importanti tmexxi kumpanija tas-software u ħanistaqsu wkoll kif tibbilanċja bejn dawn iż-żewġ irwoli. Għanda podcast ieħor li għandu x'jaqsam ma' health ukoll u għandha mistiedna interessanti ħafna, Go Within, ħankunu qed naqsmu ukoll il-link tagħha biex jekk tridu tisimgħu l-podcast tagħha. Fil-fatt li ngħidu illi naħseb kemm ilha li qalt li bdiet u hija waħda minn tal-ewwel, hija l-ewwel waħda li naħseb bdiet podcast ta' Malta. Yasmin, grazzi ħafna tal-li oġbok tiġi.
Thank you.
Kif inti?
Very well, thank you.
I'm glad that you joined us. Jiena xtaqtek li tiġi hemm ħafna affarijiet li jinteressawni dak kollu illi tippromuovi inti, healing, breathwork, being in a community, yoga, ġifri għandha ħafna affarijiet nistaqsik. Imma li ħaġa nistaqsik, inti tmexxi kumpanija tas-software. U hija xi ħaġa totalment differenti minn dak illi tagħmel, kif tibbilanċjahom. U kif issib il-pjaċir għax naħseb waħda mis-sigreti tal-ħajja hija li ssib il-passjoni f'dak kollu li tkun qed tagħmel.
I think you're going to hear me say the words go within a lot in this next few minutes. Because that has really been the solution that I've found for many things. And especially this question of work-life balance. I think it's really important, not so much how much we work or exactly the work that we do, but how that work makes us feel. If you're happy, you don't mind working a lot. You don't mind having a very full life. The problem is when we're not okay inside, then everything feels like a burden, everything's a lot harder. So from when I got into my own wellness journey back in 2010, I just always looked within to myself to see, okay, if I'm getting tired or if my work is not fulfilling me, then why? And I try to find the solutions within myself because it's very easy to try and control our outer world and say, okay, it's the job not making me happy, or it's the relationship, or it's the where I live, or it's the country, or it's the government. But really and truly, very often when we change these things, our insides don't always change. Sometimes they do, but not always. And I've found that very often you can just look within and see what's not aligned. And when you find that happiness within, you really enjoy your work on the outside. And people often asked me about, my role at the software company at Temmen, and it's actually been such an enjoyable role for me. I had such a different understanding of what software is about before I took on the role. And what I've realized is it's just such a human thing.
Wow.
And in business in general, Simon Sinek once said, if you don't know people, you don't know business. So I find a lot of commonalities actually in just managing people and getting people to be happy in their work and getting them to communicate and express themselves and think creatively. I mean, these are actually the same human issues that you will find in any business.
Nasib li huwa s-sigrit ta' kollox li kieku kulħadd isib dik il-passjoni u dak il-pjaċir f'dak li jkun qed jagħmel l-ħajja in ġenerali se tkun ħafna aħjar. Jiena ili nsegwik snin u għalija f'għajnejja dak illi inti kont tagħmel snin ilu issa qed inkunu esposti ħafna iktar għalih illum il-ġurnata. Minti bdejt ħafna ilu. Kif kelli nistaqsik, x'ġara fil-ħajja tiegħek forsi il-ġenituri tiegħek, l-upbringing tiegħek li moħħok kien miftuħ għalihom biex inti kont waħda minn tal-bidu fajnejja li tippromuovi daw l-affarijiet. X'kien it-turning point?
I think a lot of the times our turning point comes when we see that there's something that is not working in our lives or something that's not happy. And for me it was that. I was in a relationship that was a little bit dysfunctional. One of my ex-partners was quite addicted to drugs and he was quite dysfunctional in his relationship with himself. And it really made me sort of question myself as well and sort of look at my own addictions, of which I had a couple back then. And I really sort of looked within and said, my God, like why do we act sometimes in a way that sabotages ourselves? And why do we have addiction? I started really looking within to myself to find these answers. This was back in 2010. I left Malta, I went to South America on my own for 8 months. And I was trying to find the answer to this question.
Which took quite a lot, like is-sifer ġifieri biex tagħmilha, imma aħna nistgħu nagħmluha din il-ħaġa fil-ħajja tagħna ta' kuljum. Hemm tools u affarijiet li jisma' we have to step, pause a bit, ħalli nsiru nafu iktar lil nfusna.
Definitely, yes, I think we're so blessed nowadays that we have podcasts like this and so many other platforms where we can get a lot of information about how to go within, how to find ourselves. So many practices, you just open YouTube and you'll find hundreds of breathwork classes, yoga classes, and so on. I think what I really found that helped me, and was a big kind of motivation to me starting Sanya, was that sometimes all the information can be overwhelming as well, and we don't really know how to take it and apply it into our own lives. I had read this book many years ago that told me that when we're studying things on the outside, right, like if we're studying something about the tangible reality, if I want to know what this table is, I just need to measure it, I can there's a tangible reality. But when it comes to the inner world, there's no 1 + 1 = 2. There's no formula that fits for everyone. And in that sense, the only way that you can map your own inner world is yourself. And the best way to get support is actually from people who have already mapped their own inner world. And that had really struck me. And in fact, I've had a lot of mentors along the way that sometimes even just one word, just one book recommendation can really help you shift your life and come to a realization that creates a lot of positive change.
Eżattina li kien ħafna l-podcast so għalek ġidda l-idea għaliex meta ngħid il-podcasts bidlu l-ħajt probabbli jkun hemm min jisma' u jgħidu ma xi esaġerazzjoni, ma smajt tips illi li jenuni f'ċertu momenti ta' diffikultà u għat jgħinuni f'affarijiet oħra, ġifieri dik hija xi ħaġa importanti ħafna. Inti semma ħafna li yoga hija importanti ħafna lik. Xaġa li nixtieq ngħid hija li isma' ma jfissirx li għax li joġobni l-fitness, il-kulħadd ħajoġob il-fitness, jien dejjem ngħid isma' ssib dik il-ħaġa li lilek ħatejnek. Fil-każ tiegħek il-yoga taħseb hija li l-iktar ħaġa li ħajtek?
Yoga has played a big part in my inner journey. Yoga and meditation, I think it's hard to tear them apart. Obviously, yoga is much more well known and widely practiced than meditation is, even though actually the purpose of yoga is meditation.
Exactly. Ġifieri, eżatti, tipo inkorporati ħafna ġurxin.
They're one and the same, really and truly. If you look at the yoga philosophy, it was a method to manage to help us to still our mind and connect with that part of ourselves that is beyond the mind. In yoga, one of the yoga sutras, it says, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stopping of the kind of flickering of the mind, which we know is like most of the time when I teach meditation. And I ask people, like, why did you come to learn meditation? And I ask them, like, is it for health? Is it for peace of mind? Is it to find yourself? When I say peace of mind, everyone's like, yes. Yes, me. I think we all realize that our mind can be quite unhelpful to us. The thought that it thinks. The author Michael Singer makes this really beautiful metaphor that if you take your mind out and make it into a person and hang out with it for a day, would you like this person as a friend?
Zvat nasib qed nirreferu għal l-istess ktib ma nafx Under Third Soul li qed tgħid jiena l-iktar ħaġa li affaxxinatni tiegħu hija li diminit li nqumu minn filgħodu inti dejjem għandek dialog. Isma' x'nagħmel ninżel nieħu kafè isfel jew nista' naqra u nitażena iktar fis-sodda. U dawk huma affarijiet li lilek jgħajjuk. So, naħseb għalhekk il-maġġoranza tan-nies jixtiequ li jħossuhom daqsxejn iktar kalmi. So, yoga helps in that sense as well.
That's the whole purpose of yoga. Literally is just to calm the mind, because beyond the mind, there is our real nature. It's kind of like the sea, right? On the surface, there are the choppy waves, but underneath, there's the ocean. And it's the same with us. You know, the mind is constantly stressed and worried and neurotic and paranoid, but underneath that is who we are. Right? You've experienced going into the ice bath. What's so magical about the ice bath is when you go in, your mind stops.
Vera.
And when your mind stops, you're at peace.
Vera.
So a lot of these techniques are actually just about helping us to go beyond the mind.
Jina għadni ġdida għall-ice bath, jien nista' ngħid li għamlet li differenza kbira, anka resilience fil-fitness ħassejt differenza kbira, imma ġifri għalhekk tħoss għax ħafna nisbatu li wara l-ewwel filmati, jiena tilhom ma nistax nispjegalkom, jiena kelli relazzjoni vera ħażina mal-kiesaħ, imma ma nistax nifhem li nidħol inweġġa u noħroġ vera ferħana. That is the reason why għax inti moħħok jikkalma u jkun qed jaħseb fil-kesħa, tkun għamil dak xejn dak sforz, dik hija raġuni.
I think it's one of them. There are obviously physiological effects of the ice bath that create certain proteins and hormones and endorphins that actually create that feel-good feeling in the body. But I think the calming of the mind is a big part of it as well. And it's not just the ice bath, right? Even exercise. Like when you're really in the zone in exercise, you're not thinking about your work or your this or your that, right? You're just in that flow state. And I think that's the beauty of the human experience, that there are so many ways. There's exercise, there's yoga, there's meditation, there's dancing, there's breathing, there's so many beautiful ways. And
aħna tlifnija daġej li nkunu, aħna we lost the ability to be in a state of flow, even in our work, in everything, minħabba li għanna ħafna affarijiet li telfuna, notifications on the mobile all the time. So għalek huwa sabiħ li nisbħalek jirġaw jippromovi kważi affarijiet primittivi. Il-yoga, il-meditazzjoni, ħajja li kienu jgħixu qabel fil-verità ħajja kienet ħafna iktar slow. Għalek xtaqt nistaqsik issa, jiena naf li inti tippratikaw tgħin lin-nies fil-breathing, imma għadni ma kellix okkażjoni fej niskopru jina saftetilu sa' kemm ma konċ naf bija, jien kon naħseb li l-breathwork huwa toqgħod tuħu nifs bil-mod biex tikkalma lilek innifsek qabel ma noħroġ fuq il-palku nippreżenta xi ħaġa. Meta mbagħad esperjenzajta hija xi ħaġa totalment differenti. Tista' tfehmna x'inhi breathwork u x'ikun qed jiġri u kif tagħmluha intom?
For sure. There are actually many different kinds of breathwork, and you can classify them into two main schools. One is the breathwork that comes from the yoga tradition, which in yoga it's called pranayama. All relaxing breathwork comes from those yoga practices. They're very relaxing and healing for the physical body, calming for the mind, and so on. They're used to actually prepare the mind for meditation, but they have a lot of other benefits as well. Then there are another type of breathwork, which is
challenging type,
which is more transformational, and that instead of just relaxing us, it takes us into a completely different state of mind. And this state of mind is one which is not your ordinary state of mind. It's a state of mind that is clearly different, right? So we have many different states of mind, right? Like we're here now, we have one state of mind. If we were to drink a bottle of whiskey together, we'd be in a different state of mind, right? Exactly. If we were to undergo hypnosis, we'd be in a different state of mind. And the breath work, these transformational styles, which are all based in one kind of particular breathing called the conscious connected breath, takes us into what's called a holotropic state. And that is an altered state of consciousness. And in that state, you really are beyond the mind in a very, very significant way. And people often sort of come out of it and think, how is that possible to feel like that without any substances? Because it really is very different from the way that we see our lives in an ordinary moment.
And għal xiex jużawa, kiew kelli ngħidlek isma' I need to heal from something in particular, breathwork will help, or hemm protocols differenti li wieħed jista' jagħmel. Imma breathwork pereżempju jgħin f'dan il-qasam.
Yes, I mean, it's important to know there are some contraindications for breathwork, so it's not for everyone. So
le, u importanti li tagħmilha ma' xi ħadd li jifhem.
Exactly, so it's important to do it in a safe environment, because it is, maybe aggressive is not the right word, but it is quite an intense experience.
It is intense and it's hard. Per eżempju, jiena ħassejta diffiċli ħafna. Per eżempju, aħna konna minna 6 rounds, 3 round għalija niftakar qabad nipenika kont ħanqum. Imma the magical thing about it was kif għamna għallu li kemm taħseb li l-ek għaddejja u jiena I thought it was just 10 minutes and it was an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it was magical. U għalek xtaqtek vera tferma xinti tamila.
Yes.
And you do it within a community.
Yes. The one that I facilitate is a little bit different from the one that you experienced. The Wim Hof is a bit of a different style method. The one I do comes much more from the work of Dr. Stanislav Grof. So you're actually lying down for about 2 hours with music as well. So it's more of an inner journey and it's a very emotional process. It's extremely good for healing. So things in our past that we haven't quite let go of or we haven't quite made sense of. Sometimes we see things in the past from a very different perspective, and even just that alone can reduce a lot of the weight and the heaviness around that experience. But also, some people come to breathwork and just have an amazing time. They just completely enjoy the whole thing and they really connect with their soul, with that part of themselves that is happy and playful. So you can experience many different things, and even the same person in different sessions will have completely different experiences. Sometimes there are things we need to process and we need to, really go to maybe something that was a little bit more challenging. But sometimes we also, especially in this day and age, just need to feel our own happiness, which, as you said, our modern life sometimes takes us a bit far away from that.
Taħseb li we're allowing ourselves to be happy. Ġili palissa najta I'm really happy today, enough I'm satisfied, for example, enough namel lajz, but namel xie very good fitness. And sometimes nibda nejt maħaqni li nkun happy, and bad things come in. Ija xi ħaġa li namlu fil-ħajja t-esperjenza ħanti, hija xi ħaġa li qrajt dwarha naħseb fil-ktieb ukoll li we don't allow ourselves to be happy because maybe we're so inundated with bad things u l-ħin kollu jipritkaw affarijiet li we don't allow ourselves to be happy, and it's good to be happy.
It is. I mean, that's the point of this all, right? To enjoy it.
Work for it.
I mean, I think it's also kind of stemming from our biology. It's much easier for the nervous system to go into fight or flight than into rest and digest. So it's easier for us, if there was an explosion here right now, we would all just, spring into action. But if we were stressed and then we had to calm down, it would take some hours, it would take some time. And this actually comes from our past as hunter-gatherers. We couldn't just come to a new place and be relaxed. We had to stay a bit alert for threats. So our nervous system is wired to stress quickly and rest slowly. So obviously in our day and age, sometimes we're just not used to feeling at peace. And I think it's actually more peace than happiness that sometimes we don't really allow ourselves to feel, because when we stop and when we slow and when we feel peace, it can feel unsettling. And sometimes it can even bring up things that the distraction of stimulation doesn't really give us time to sit with and process. In fact, we're all a little bit addicted to content and stimulation and information.
I know. Ma bat meta smur session bħal di, per eżempju, inti you promote ħafna community work and you encourage people to go. U ġin nara status iżnajt imma pers li ma nkunna fil-ħadd. Will I be okay? Why is it really good to be part of a community and experience these things as a community?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because I think it's really something that's missing. I think loneliness is actually something very, very common in today's day and age. I saw some statistics recently about how many people...
We just did a podcast on loneliness, in fact, so...
So, you know, it's really a huge issue. And community is the antidote. I mean, we're tribal creatures. We're meant to live in community together. We're actually meant even to raise kids in community. We're meant to celebrate in community. We're meant to grieve in community. We're meant to support each other. The beauty of having authentic human connections is actually one of the most satisfying things in the human experience. And in fact, if you look at what is the biggest predictor of how long we live, it's not exercise, it's not whether we smoke, it's not our diet, it's not where we live, it's the depth and breadth of our human connections. So community is really important, and I think the saddest thing about our modern world is not that we don't have opportunities for community, but we've forgotten how to be good members of a community, because community needs authenticity, it needs understanding, it needs empathy. And sometimes I feel like we've almost lost a bit of our impersonal skills because we're carrying so much burden and so much pain that we've forgotten actually how to relate to each other in that almost innocent and playful way. In fact, this was one of my dreams for this year actually, was to like really structurize a community around Sanya where people can come every month and experience things in the inner world and connect with each other, because very often, you know, I love tea ceremony and I host a lot of tea ceremonies, and at the end everyone shares, you know, what's came up for them in the tea and what's going on for them in their lives. And I often think, oh, I wish I could just bottle up what everyone said, because they all have so much wisdom that they share with each other. And that is the power of community. It's not they come to me and I'm leading the tea and they just listen to all my wisdom. That's not... You know, the power. The power is like we're all here together as human beings in a circle and learning from each other.
And I think the first step is the hardest. Maybe you'll feel intimidated if you go within a group of people and you know no one. But then once you're there, it will be a magical experience, I'm sure. Dan il-podcast ma kienx ikun possibbli mingħajr Love GI. Ħobs Love GI, l-aktar ħobża bnina fi gżiritna, isiba biss fil-ħwienet tal-Maypole. Team Sport, il-post fejn isib l-aqwa brand sportivi bħal Diadora u Under Armour u l-aqwa ditti ta' żraben, sukoni u ħoka fost oħrajn, isibuhom liklin u birkirkara. Hypro, prodotti mammolin bi proteina biżżejjed biex tikkumplimenta d-dieta tiegħek ta' kuljum u li ser jgħinuk fit-training li tagħmel biex tgħix ħajja aktar b'saħħitha. Gulon, gallettini bla zokkor b'toma bnina. Natru, ħalib plant-based b'ingredjenti naturali biss mingħajr zokkor miżjud. Fior di Vita, għal varjetà kbira ta' ġobnijiet.
So we do a lot of different things. I mean, last week we just had a retreat, so that's kind of like the most intimate, right? Because we're spending 4 days together, doing a lot of different things together. But the community which I'm running monthly at Sanya, every month it's a different thing, because that's the beauty, right? Not always breath work, but one time we do breath work, one time we do a tea ceremony, one time we do meditation, another time we'll do cacao ceremony. Every time it's different. Sometimes we go to the beach and have a cold swim. And the point is just to kind of show up together and experience something that helps us connect with ourselves in a space which is supportive and where people can also relate to your inner experience and give you that reflection of like, hey, you know, what you're experiencing is totally normal. We hide so much of what we're going through because we're scared. But in these settings, like it actually always amazes me how easy it is for people to trust and feel safe to actually share quite vulnerable and delicate emotions. Like even on the retreat, you know, people come as strangers, but by the next morning I always remind them, like, you remember that like 12 hours ago you were strangers.
Ġimil.
Because it's, when the space is right, it's actually very easy to feel safe. But you're right, sometimes we just need to make that push of like, yes, I'm going alone, but I'm going to find people there who can see me and really understand me as a human being and value my presence, even though they don't know me.
Eżatt, li, u no pieċir nsemmijax meta għamilna l-podcast fuq loneliness, qed tikber ħafna, mhix xi ħaġa għalhekk in-nies kienu jaħsbu li hija xi ħaġa li għax tkun kbira fl-età, it's not the case, illum tista' tesperjenza ma meta tkun żgħira u affarijiet bħalma tagħmel inti huma importanti ħafna. U xi ħaġa oħra li inti titkellem ħafna dwarha hija l-healing. Familjari maħħa jekk rajt dak il-ktieb Anta Third Soul, xi ħaġa li laqtitni ħafna kienet li jekk aħna kellna trauma f'ħajjitna, naħsbu li diffiċli ħafna biex neħles minna, immaġina għandek xewka ġasu bajk u tajt ismaj, mela ħana mlilla stik jiena u jekk ħadd ma jmiss l-stik jiena ħankun happy imma nagħmel ħajti nipprova ħadd ma jmiss li dik. Allura l-enerġija tiegħi ta' ħajti kollha tmur milli nipproteġi dak is-seba' u dik ix-xewka. Immek ma tkunx solvejt il-problema ħateqpem. Healing hija ħafna kbar. Mhux kulħadd naħseb jieħu l-istess mod ta' kif wieħed ifiq. La darba tħossok li inti tista' tkampa mal-problema permezz ta' affarijiet differenti, permezz ta' meditazzjoni, tista' tmur għall-għajnuna psychologist, hemm ħafna affarijiet li tista' tagħmel. Once li solvejt il-problema hija solvuta għal dejjem, jew huwa xogħol li jrid jibqa' dej ħajtek kollha. Għax din vera naħseb l-importanti. Għax aħna nagħmlu xi ħaġa minn għalina hija di lesta telqet minn ħajjitna u jiena ma naħsibx li hu l-każ, imma jgħidli l-opinjoni tiegħek x'inhi.
No, I definitely agree. I think we're always healing, and I think that's the beauty of the human life. Like I told you before the show, I spent the last year studying with Dr. Gabor Mate, who's one of the world experts on trauma, and he's in his mid-70s now, and he's constantly telling stories about how he got triggered and how he got offended with his wife and didn't speak to her for 3 days. He's like, you know, at the young age of 76, I'm still getting triggered. And I think we need these stories because sometimes, and this is why I really admire him as a teacher, because he's very humble in showing that he's a human just like anyone else. You know, in the healing world, we can become a bit goal-oriented, just like we are in life. Like, this is my goal and I'm going to heal. And actually, the healing process is all about letting go of those shoulds and I have to and of our resistances. Like, even if there is pain, you know, we don't want to touch that pain because it hurts and we don't want to have to deal with it. But really and truly, very often, if we just like hold the pain and actually spend some time with it, it actually dissipates quite fast. It doesn't mean that it's going to go away. You know, some pains are very deep and they need to be let go many times and we need to carry them with us for our whole life sometimes. But it's, I think, the way we think about it, you know, sometimes we have this sense that, oh, if I have a trauma, I'm broken, or if I'm lonely, something's wrong with me. Instead of thinking like, you know what, maybe loneliness is just a part of the human experience. And maybe if we are human, just like we need to eat and we need to sleep, we also just need to accept that there are some more challenging emotions that will always be there. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, it just means that you're alive. But how can we learn to hold those emotions? Because when we resist them, then we usually suffer. Right? The problem is not so much loneliness, but the fact that we judge our loneliness and we don't want our loneliness and we want to stop the loneliness. And that creates a lot of suffering. Whereas actually, if you just sit with it and enjoy the beauty of it, loneliness has a lot to teach us and it has a lot of wisdom to show us.
Xi ġmiel. Vera, din ħafna online ta' dak illi niprofa nitgħallem jiena. Fil-fatt tajjeb illi semmejt il-Gabor Mate għax aħna dejjem nippromovu l-kodba. Semmejna Anta Third Soul tajjeb ħafna u Gabor Mate fil-fatt qed naqra l-kodba tiegħu wieħed minnhom huwa The Myth of Normal. U li jagħmelu illi jiddeskrivi u jitkellem fid-dettalji jekk inti għandek trauma u ma tiddiljax magħha jista' jkun li ħajkollok mart fiżiku u xaġa partikolari li vera ġbitni kien qasam li darba kellu l-birthday u kien hemm it-tifel tiegħu u ma rridx jgħidlu happy birthday u ma rridx jieħu ritratt miegħu. U jgħid jammetti li taħdaqqa. Umbat wara bdew jgħidulu għalfejn għamil dak l-ġeb kollu għax it-tifel tiegħek ma rridx tipo iċabċablu jew ma rridx jieħu ritratt ħaġa kienet u realizza li meta kien żgħir he didn't feel loved, so dik it-triggerjat qed ngħidilkom il-ħaġa x'jekk interessakom dat-tip ta' kodba huma myth of normal u ieħor insejtu.
When the body says no.
Eżatt, dak rajtu lest myth of normal huwa daqsxejn ikbar u għaddejja minnu. Huwa interessanti ħafna u ifhem tista' segwu fuq il-medja soċjali wkoll.
I think also something beautiful related to that is healing ourselves is not only to stop us getting sick, but it's also going back to that idea of community. There's this really beautiful saying that if you don't heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people that didn't cut you. Wow. Right? This is a beautiful example that he didn't heal what hurt him and he bled on someone that didn't cut him.
How good.
And I think this is a big reason why, we have a lot of tension with each other and a lot of aggression and a lot of our unhealed pains we end up throwing at each other, sometimes even interactions on the road or in a supermarket or someone accidentally hits you. Like there's a lot of aggression that we show to each other because of the weight of all of these emotions. And, back in the past, we lived more connected to nature. So these tensions were discharged, I believe, in a bit more of a better way. Now we're living in an environment where we're so highly strung that if we don't make a conscious effort to look within and see some of these ways that we react to the world that come again from that constriction of trying to protect ourselves, we end up actually creating a society between each other that's not very harmonious.
Talġi, jiena vera tnuħu pjaċiri li ġejt Yasmin vera ngħidlek thank you għaliex l-għanda dan il-podcast dak huwa illi jien dejjem ngħid hemm ħafna informazzjoni hemm barra u hemm ħafna tools li wieħed jista' juża biex jgħinuna fil-ħajja, ma mhux kulħadd għandu aċċess għalihom mhux kulħadd tifittixhom. Iżda inti waħda persuni ewlenina u Malta li tippromuovi ħafna dawn l-affarijiet. Ħafna nies jafuk tal-li qed isegwuna, ma f'każ li l-ħadna xi ħadd li ma jafukx misegwu l-Yasmin Degiorgio għaliex anke l-posts tiegħek huma meaningful ħafna f'dak kollu li huwa talim minnu nnifsu. Ġifieri vera nixtieq ngħidlek grazzi tal-li sibt il-ħin tal-li oġbok tiġi, ħanerġa' nsemmi l-podcast tiegħek Go Within fittxuh ukoll għax huwa podcast b'ħafna minn dawn it-tips u ftit fuq dak li tkellimna wkoll u vera grazzi minn qalbi.
Thank you so much.
Wasana fit-tmim ta' podcast ieħor, jiena nħeġġiġkom passoltu biex taqsmu dan il-podcast, isimuna fuq Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud kullimkien, jekk taħsbu li xi ħadd jista' jgawdi minnu qasmuh magħhom u idħlu fiċ-channels tagħna u għamlu subscribe u awtomatikament tirċievu l-episodi. Grazzi ħafna u narawkom podcast ieħor.